What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another edition of the Sheehan Show here on Sherdog.com, and I am coming to you directly after Bellator 289. And it was, do you know what? It was like a good and bad event kind of stuck together, but in general, it's what the very good parts were very, very good, and I'll concentrate mostly on them today. The main event, I suppose, is the first thing I have to get into. I'm absolutely chewing to get into this, and it was such an interesting fight. You know, maybe not the best fight in the world, but a very interesting battle. Very interesting how you scored it, and very, very interesting how the three judges scored it. Thankfully, two of them scored it the right way. Two of the best judges in the world. We'll get into that in a second. And one of them, who isn't one of the best judges in the world, didn't score it correctly. Although, having said that, it wasn't the worst score in the world. It was just like a visibly inaccurate score. But we will get into all of that, I suppose, in a second. For Bellator, one thing I just wanted to mention first, because usually when I'm doing these post shows, I like to kind of make a slight point about the promotion in general with the backing of a show that just happened. And I think this one, the interesting thing to make here and the interesting point to make is the tournament and how well the tournaments have actually worked for Bellator. We have two very interesting tournament fights here again. We have a very interesting tournament final. And even though Sergio Pettis got injured and kind of it derailed the tournament a little bit, it still turned out to be a really, really good tournament. The lightweight tournament, it was a featherweight tournament, wasn't it? The featherweight tournament was a great tournament. They're on about doing the lightweight tournament as well coming up. I'm sure that'll be good. But Bellator, the way they do these tournaments, I really, really like them. You know, there was a lot of overkill obviously before. They're doing it now where it's, you know, one a year maybe, or one every 18 months, and it's a little bit different from PFL. They're doing it their own way, so I like it. I think it's good to do it this way. Now, the one thing I would say was, it has the champion not actually being in this for most of it benefited the tournament a little bit. It feels, I don't know what, it feels like it has a little bit. So I know it's very hard to maybe leave the champion out or have a championship match outside of it, but it just feels a bit weird when the champion is in it. It feels a little less weird when there's an interim champion in it, and I don't know, is that the way to go? If there's something you could do, but either way, we have some great fights from these tournaments, and with another couple of great fights from it tonight. But I say with all of these, the chasing back, I suppose, with one championship, with PFL and everywhere, it's great to have something different, and that's definitely something different that Bellator have that the UFC for me, no reason refuses to do. So it's great stuff from them altogether. It's really, really good. Another big thing for Bellator tonight, I think, as well, was it wasn't a kind of a dead rubber fight in the main event. Or a couple of the fights in the main card weren't kind of dead rubber fights, because that's happened an awful lot recently. You know, the MVP fight, and there's been loads of them recently where it's just kind of bad fight after bad fight in the main event, or in kind of fights we're looking forward to, and like fights we're rightly looking forward to and building up and talking about as very, very good fights, and then they just kind of disappoint. You know, it's not Bellator's fault. I'm not criticising Bellator in any way. Sometimes you get an even matchup between two very good fighters, and it just kind of turns into an even battle that's not a great fight. You know, that can happen, and there's no problem with that at all. We all know that. The issue is it kind of happened too many times for Bellator recently, and it feels like it's 5 cards in a row. Now, I'm not saying it is, or maybe it's not if you go back and look, but it feels like the last 5 cards have been terrible for Bellator. And the fact that they kind of got out of that tonight with the main fights, and no, not the cards in general, I mean like the top couple of fights, but they've definitely reversed that tonight, and we come out, I'm literally here minutes away from the ending of the card, and I'm hyped after it, and that hasn't been the way for Bellator over the last while. So a great way to, kind of in the year, obviously they have another event coming up, and I'm going to be looking back in the next couple of weeks as well at Bellator's year. I'm going to do a review show of that as well, along with some other promotions, so I look forward to that definitely. But let's get into this card, and I have to start at the main event. I usually start from the bottom and work my way up, but I have to start at this main event, and I think the way to do this is just to go through the fight kind of bit by bit. And it's not a massively overcomplicated fight. If you're waking up this morning and you haven't seen the fight or whatever, there not too much happened during the fight. So I'll run you through it. Round 1, Sabatello went for a takedown. He took the back, never fully controlled though. And that was a real theme of the whole fight. That he kept getting in positions that looked like he was about to earn himself control, but never really fully controlled anything. And even if you see the stats afterwards, and we know the stats of control stats are stupid anyway, but still, these are even more stupid because it was almost no control on the whole fight he had, because it was always a struggle for that position. Not always, but at nearly every point in that fight, it was struggle. Even when he kind of took the back, Stots was kind of leaning on an elbow and trying to pull himself out and almost getting himself out over and over and over again. Even in the first round here, Stots was controlling the arm totally, and it looked like he was actually about to submit it at one stage and was pulling down the arm, pulling it over his hand like this and pulling it down with his shoulder. Sabatello finally landed on top, but then Stots immediately reverses and gets back up. Not much happened in the round. You'd have to give it as a Sabatello round, I think, just for him getting on top, landing a couple of strikes, but he didn't really land any strikes, didn't really get any subs. The Stots kind of arm, if you want to give that round to Stots, I actually don't have too much of a problem with it, because he had that arm, wasn't really an armbar, wasn't really in as a submission, didn't land too many shots. But Sabatello didn't really do much either. Look, it was a Sabatello round. You might even go to the secondary criteria on that one. But yeah, the second round then, Stots is biting on absolutely everything. And I thought at the start of this second round, this is not good for Stots. It did not look good for Stots at the start of that second round. But then there was a low blow that Sabatello was like, no, I want to keep fighting, after Stots kicked him low. And as he said that, Stots came in and hit him with a big right hand, and then the referee was like, well, you said you didn't want to stop, and Sabatello was like, grand, and Stots had hit him with the right hand. And it was funny, that right hand was actually kind of a turning point, because I think Stots came on and hit him with another shot after it, and it actually gave him a bit of go forward. It gave him a bit of confidence. He stopped 2 takedowns after that and landed a lovely uppercut. There was a clinched in, there's a body lock takedown for Sabatello. He made it look easy at that stage, and I was kind of thinking in the second round, okay, Stots is winning here when he's out free, but he keeps getting taken down. Even if it's not easy, he keeps landing in positions for Sabatello that the longer the fight goes, if he can keep getting those positions, surely at one stage he'll get a long clinch, maybe get a submission, maybe land some big shots. But Stots kept scrambling, just kept scrambling. Sabatello did very, very little on top. There was a knee bar attempt late in the round for Stots, and he definitely won it. To me, it's 1-1 after 2 rounds. The first round you have to give it to Sabatello just because of the control. There wasn't really much landed. The second round you have to give that to Stots. He landed the better strikes early after that ball kick. He almost got a knee bar late, and Sabatello did nothing. In the third, there was a grounded knee that Sabatello landed after Stots had kept his knee on the ground. Then he easily again stopped 2 takedowns, and he was landing shots going forward. So the jab when Stots threw it, he didn't seem to throw it enough throughout the fight, but it was landing. There was a takedown then for Stots. There was a scramble. He got the side control, got up, landed a couple of knees, and the way up a couple of scrambles again. It was another round for Stots there. So Stots 1, 2, and 3, round 1 for Sabatello. I think it was really straightforward, the first 3 rounds. Very, very straightforward. The 4th round, wrestling kind of ensued at the start of that round. Sabatello nearly got a choke. Stots scrambled well. He was looking for the darts. Almost got control, but didn't really land anything either. Both landed a few on the feet late. It was extremely close. It was one of those rounds where if someone had landed something big at the end of it, they would have taken it. But they both landed half big shots, I would say, towards the end. Sabatello was the one on top. Sabatello was the one winning the round up until then. He almost got that choke early as well. That's one part I think people might miss. I think that choke was actually pretty good early. He had the effective grappling there. If it was even towards the end, Sabatello wins that round. So for me, it's 2-2. That 4th round could go either way. That the first 3 rounds, pretty straightforward, I think. 4th round, very, very close, but I think Sabatello won it. And in the 5th round, this was definitely a Stots round. He was jabbing, landing lots of punches from the first 90 seconds. Landed loads of punches in that first 90 seconds, which makes the score we'll get to at the end even more crazy. But Sabatello scrambled. He almost took the back. Stots was landing some elbows. He just like literally elbows like that as he kind of had his back half taken. It was like half taken the back is a perfect fucking. Sorry, I shouldn't be cursing. Is the perfect word to be using here. I think I curse it because I've listened to Sabatello all night. But anyway, and he was like, someone like has my back there, but I have my arm. Sorry, we should be talking to the microphone. Someone has my arm here, and it's like, well, we're not going anywhere. We're not doing anything, and I'm gonna just like hit you with this arm. It was one of those ones. Like Sabatello had the position, but he did absolutely nothing with it, and it was just stuck in this weird position for like 2 minutes. Almost took the back, but Sabatello gets to guard. Bit of exchange is laid. It's a definite Stots round. He boxed him up for the first 90 seconds. There's no doubt about it. Stots won that round. And thankfully, after the fight, we went to the judges' scorecards, and 2 of the judges scored it the right way, 48-47, the exact way I scored it, 2, 3, and 5 for Stots, 1 and 4 for Sabatello, and those 2 judges, remember their names now, right? Brian Minor and Eric Cologne. Whenever we see bad decisions, we see a judge's name, everyone's tweeting it, this judge is terrible, sending them hateful messages and all that. Why don't go online? Brian Minor, Eric Cologne, tweet out those names. You know? These judges are the judges we should be having judging in these big fights. They made the right decision. They sent the guy home, or they sent the guy into the final to get the $1 million. And they, the people are always like, oh, they took money out of this guy's pocket, they took it out of his family and all. Well, they put the money into the right guy's pocket. They put him towards the final to win that $1 million. They got the right decision. They followed the criteria. They did it the way you're supposed to do it, and they got it right. So all praise to Brian Minor and Eric Cologne, 2 fantastic judges. And then we Douglas Crosby, who scored at 50-45. Now, as I said, not the worst score I've ever seen, but a bad score. And I'm not one to criticize judges or anything like that, but this was that 5th round. There's no way you can score that 5th round for Sabatello. That's a Stots round all day long, twice on Sunday. And it's near, what time is it? It's nearly Sunday here. It's 5 o'clock in the morning on Saturday only, but it's nearly Sunday. And that 2nd round too, like, whatever about the 3rd round, the 2nd round, you have to give that to Stots too. You have to give the 3rd round to Stots as well. As I said, they're pretty straightforward. To give all 3 of those rounds to Sabatello, that is terrible judging. That is bad judging. And as I said, other people will come on and they'll call it terrible judging, and they'll come on next week and they'll say something else is terrible judging. Last week, the same thing. I don't do that. That's not me. I'm not coming on here roaring and shouting about judges calling them terrible all the time. I'll tell you when they actually are terrible. And this was terrible. This was very, very, very bad judging. Now, look, we all make mistakes. We all, we all have rounds that people disagree with or whatever, and all judges do. Some of the judges I mentioned there earlier, some of the ones I've praised before as good judges, they've put in cards as well that I'm like, well, I'm not sure. I don't agree. Douglas Crosby continually puts in bad cards. Continually puts in baffling scores for rounds and fights. And, the fact that he's still given these big positions, it makes you question how he's still getting these big positions, why he's still getting these big positions. Absolutely shouldn't be. But it also makes you question why Eric Cologne gets a lot and Brian Minor is a guy who should be getting more. This guy's a fantastic judge, fantastic referee as well. We saw him reffing tonight. I'll say Eric Cologne again. He judges some of the real top fights in Vegas and beyond. And as I said, he should be still right up there judging all of them. But Brian Minor as well, I think it's time to, be getting him out to Vegas and be getting him to other places as well to judge the top fights, because he's absolutely a top judge. But back to the fight, I suppose, just for a second before we move on. An almighty battle. I tweeted just after, it'd be a damn shame and a kind of indictment on MMA if the guy who really didn't land many shots or didn't have many submission attempts, he had a bit of a submission attempt, as I said, with the choke in round 4. If he had won the fight, it would have been a shame. It would have been a bit like, it would have been a bad, not a stain on MMA, but a bad indictment of how MMA is scored and what MMA is as a sport. Like the guy who went out there and landed the strikes, the guy who went out there and went for the knee bar, the guy who went out there to win the fight, won the fight. And that's the way it should be. And I talk often about how to design the criteria. And I think, in my opinion, the criteria is designed well to give the fight to the right guy. And tonight that showed, the two people who used the criteria correctly allowed the correct guy to win the fight. And that's the way it should be. And that's what we had tonight. But look, Stots moves on. In my opinion, look, he's been... Sergio Pettis is still the champion, but I think he's been the best bantamweight in Bellator for the last couple of years. He's beaten some of the best guys. I know the guy he's meeting in the fight I'll get to in a second, he might have something to say about that as well, but a very, very good fighter, a top fighter. Sabatello is a brilliant wrestler, and this was a tough matchup for him, and he won it. I think Stots as well. I think Stots could actually go down on weight. I think he's a small guy at the weight at 135. I think he could fight 125 and probably do well there. I know Bellator still don't have that division, do they? But maybe in future we could see him in the UFC, or we could see him somewhere else fighting at 125, and I think that'd be very, very interesting. But yeah, I wouldn't say a great fight, a great battle, a very interesting fight, one that had you on the edge of your seat until the very, very end, even after the fight until the scores were read, and absolutely great stuff. Before we talk about Velasquez versus Carmouche, I'll just finish up the 135 pound tournament, and we have a final of now Raufeon Stots against Patchy Mix after he beat Magomedov. What a performance from Patchy Mix, honestly. I picked Magomedov coming in. Actually, I picked Stots too, so I got that one right. I never tweeted out my winning bet. But in round one, Mix was winning the striking, and he's looked so much better in his striking in the last couple of fights, and I kind of beforehand questioned his striking in the betting show, and maybe I shouldn't have, to be honest. Maybe I need to update my opinion on that, because it just looks better. 3 minutes into the first round, Magomedov went for the takedown, and Mix almost guillotined him. And I'm looking at that, and I'm kind of saying, and anyone who listened to my betting show was like, "Oh, never pick the jiu-jitsu guy over the wrestler." That's my one rule. What an idiotic rule that is. I may change that rule. But anyway, Mix almost got it, but it got back to the feet. Magomedov just could not get the takedown. It was a definite Mix round. Second round, Magomedov kicks his way inside this time, but it didn't look great. Wasn't able to get the takedown, just kind of was able to get the clinch, but that was it. And then in between, before and after that, Mix was landing lovely leg kicks, kicking him up, landing some nice stuff. His boxing looked great. And finally, Magomedov got the takedown, but it wasn't good because Patchy Mix snapped on that guillotine and slept him, put him out, yawning, snoring out with the guillotine. Absolutely lovely stuff altogether. And when you have a great guillotine, when you have great attacks like that, and you're fighting wrestlers like that who you have to force to get inside because you're out striking them, it gives you a great opportunity to win the fight in that way. Like, I still stand by the jiu-jitsu versus wrestling thing. It's very hard for jiu-jitsu to win, but if that jiu-jitsu is used in a certain way, along with striking that is dominant, then it can be very useful. It really, really can. Even if I don't always, I suppose, sign up for that as a conclusion, but today it was the conclusion, and my conclusion was wrong, and it just shows you can't write the conclusion before the conclusion is actually written, because what we saw here is what MMA is all about. One guy who comes in and, my wrestling is going to win this fight, and another guy who goes, I've something anti-wrestling, and you know what it is? It's a forearm under your chin and a bit of a squeeze and a bit of a choke and sleepy sleeps. So what a performance from Patchy Mix. What a run from Patchy Mix. This guy, I always knew Patchy Mix was a good fighter, but the run he's been on has been absolutely phenomenal. And, there's a couple of Irish guys here that had a couple of close fights with him. James Gallagher put on a good fight against him. Ended up obviously getting choked out in that one in an even enough fight that Mix was winning up until then. Franz Malambo was beating him. Oh no, sorry, that was Ricky Benet. Sorry, I got mad. Never mind. But that's a fight I'd like to see, actually. Franz against Patchy, if we could put that together. Franz is a very, very good fighter, but I think he'll be going elsewhere. But anyway, I'd love to, actually, what I was thinking there, where I was going, I'd love to see Magomedov versus James Gallagher. I've never been the biggest fan of the James Gallagher Brett Johns fight. I just don't think it makes much sense. I think the Magomedov fight would make a lot more sense, and I think that'd be a good fight to make. So let's make that happen. But in the final, and I'm sure we'll be looking forward to this again, but we've Patchy Mix fighting against Raufeon Stots, and what a fight that is. You know, you have the submissions of Mix, and if we saw anything tonight, it's that Stots can be getting on the ground. Like, he can find himself in bad positions. Now, he did well in all of those positions, but he still found himself in those positions. And I think Patchy Mix is a much superior grappler in terms of submission finishing than Danny Sabatello is. So if he can get there, I'm looking forward to seeing that. You know, I don't think you can rule Patchy on the feet now either. I do think Stots is a better striker, but the way Patchy has been performing recently, you couldn't rule him out on the feet. That is a fantastic fight. I'll be tuned in to that fight. All ends up. I cannot wait for it. Very, very good fight. Right, let's talk about Velasquez versus Carmouche. Very good fight is probably not the word you'd use to describe this until the end. And there was a few fights like that in the card. Carmouche clinched early. She just pushed forward, broke into range, and then we just waited and waited and waited and waited. There was 4 minutes of a clinch. Kevin McDonald, who actually had a good night previously on the card, just let this go for 4 minutes. And I'm like, what is going on? How is this still going here? But anyway, they broke out. He eventually broke it. And just nothing kind of happened. There was only a few seconds left. Liz Carmouche won the round. Awful round. Liz got a takedown to start the second round. They got up, there was a clinch, they got out, then Liz got another takedown, there was nothing for ages. And then there was this weird moment where nothing had happened for ages and everyone knew that Kevin McDonald was just about to stand them up. And he hadn't started to stand them up yet, but you kind of knew, you could feel it was coming, the crowd could feel it was coming, the fighters could feel it was coming. And Liz Carmouche jumped into mount. And honestly, I'm not saying this is the referee's fault or anyone's fault, but I honestly think it was actually great from Carmouche and terrible for or from Velasquez, whichever way you want to put it. But Liz Carmouche used that time where Velasquez's defenses, in my opinion, were down to get the mount. And she got the armbar from there, armbar from there, and ended up winning and tapping Velasquez out. It was, it was a terrible fight right up until the very end. It was literally like 8 minutes or whatever it was of just boredom until a great armbar towards the end. I definitely criticise the referee here for not breaking him until the very end of the first round and for not standing him up here as well. Velasquez should have been, controlling the fight at all times, should have been defending herself at all times. It's not like she didn't, but I think she let the guard down for a while, let Carmouche get to the mount, and a very, very good armbar finish for Carmouche. John's very interesting. It's coming up at the start of February, or the end of February next year. 10 years since Liz Carmouche was the first woman ever to step in the octagon for a while, obviously, when she fought Ronda Rousey. And the fact that she's armbarring people now, 10 years later, is just so great. And it's great for Liz Carmouche. Tough for Velasquez, 2 losses in a row. The first one, the way it went. This one was a bit weird as well, although there was nothing wrong with the finish itself. Very, very tough for her, a long way back now. But look, safe and grace, I suppose, is I don't think Carmouche will be the champion forever, if you want to put it that way. She's getting on in age now as well, and there's people out there, I think, that probably have the beating of her, so Velasquez probably can find her way back in. But having said that, all credit to Carmouche. It's lovely to see her there. It's great to see someone who seemingly has been like a good person and a good fighter and a good professional for years is getting their place where they deserve it, and that's great to see. So fair play to her. Right, let's run through the rest of the fights. Some great, some awful. I would put the Dalton Ross Anthony Adams fight in the awful category. Just lots of feints early. Ross was just falling onto shots, but was landing a couple. Adams landing very little from the back foot. He was fighting like a counter striker, was Anthony Adams, but not countering. It was just a bizarre fight from him. Rosta kind of mercifully struck into a takedown at the start of the second. Got the mount, took the back. Adams was defending well. Got out after like 2 minutes by just turning. Literally just turned and he got out, and it was simple as that, but he didn't bother doing it before. Everyone just missing loads of shots at the end of that round. There was a low kick after that, Rosta was in the third. Rosta was getting in closer, landing some better shots. Third round is the best round. Last 90 seconds, very, very good. Rosta hurt him late. Adams went for a takedown. Rosta got on top, and the round ended. Rosta won the fight. I think he won the unanimous decision, didn't he? He did. Not one to write home about. A good fight though, Ilara Joanna versus Denise Kielholtz. I enjoyed this one. Very interesting first round because Joanna came out hard and she was just throwing shots. And I was like, oh God, Denise is just going to counter her up here. And she was early. Much harder puncher, landing the better shots. But that kind of forced Ilara Joanna to circle. And she started landing some nice counters. And she made like that massive adjustment in the middle of a round to go from like an attacking, aggressive puncher to a slick off the back foot counter puncher, which I don't think I have ever seen before in a mixed martial arts fight. Certainly not one at this sort of level. So I was very, very interested. I think she won that round. Denise was waiting more in the second round, but Joanna was throwing hard and still circling. Denise got her timing, I think, mid-round, and started to land the better shots. Late takedown for Joanna, who won the scramble to get on top. Dan Murgliata throughout the whole fight and throughout the whole evening was standing people up very, very quickly. I think Kielholtz did win that round though. The third, very, very interesting again. Joanna got dropped early. Two nice shots from Denise after that. Joanna takedown. Again, landed in half guard after scramble. They stood up. Denise threw a few shots, kind of got stuck. Joanna got the back. She was grabbing the gloves like non-stop. And I was looking at Murgliana, I was like, well, you were nitpicking everything earlier on. She literally had the inside of both gloves at one stage after he had warned her and he didn't stand them up or didn't do anything. I was like, well, that's bizarre. Denise was landing more on top, did nothing with the back. This was an interesting one, a close decision. I had it for Kielholtz, if I'm not mistaken, but Ilara Joanna won it here. Dominant displayed in from Jaleel Willis, just landing more in the first round against Kyle Crutchmer, but not much either. Clinch from Kyle after about 3 minutes, but they got back out, and then Willis just landing more punches. Willis just destroying him in the second round, landed a lovely left hook. Kyle got a mid-cage clinch, and it was the only thing he really got. Willis landed a lovely uppercut, lovely body shot, then a jab kind of rocked Crutchmer. Takedown at him, but about 2 minutes left was no good. He went for another one, no good. And at that point, Jaleel Willis was winning the fight. Big shots for Willis early again in the third. Dan Murgliata again kept breaking up the clinches here. There was a lovely knee in the clinch from Willis. He was just winning it all. Missed the takedown for Kyle late as well, and Willis ended up on top. And that was it. You know, he ended up winning the decision. Very, very promising display here from Jaleel Willis, and a very, very good win. The biggest, I suppose, judging controversy on the night, well, after the straight score in the main event, was Cody Law against Cris Lencioni. This was the one. It was the criteria got it the right way again, but like it was one that was very close to like the other way as well. I scored it the other way. Now I had it for Law, but I'm kind of glad it was scored this way, to be honest. I like the judges' card more than I like my card. Look, there was a lot of shit talking from Lencioni in the first, landing some good shots. I thought Law was actually landing some very, very good shots. So the first round was actually not a bad round at all. He was landing better for me off the back foot. Both were landing well though. Went for a guillotine, but Law got the takedown. Close first round for me. And look, the second and third were close as well. All wrestling from Law in the second, but didn't really do much with it. Law on top in the third, didn't really do much with it. And Lencioni ended up getting the decision, you know, which I had a 30-27 Law, but I'm kind of glad that my scorecard wasn't the judge's scorecard, because it was one of those fights. It wasn't a great fight, but it was one of those fights you should be asking yourself, if you're Cody Law, what can I do next? What can I do in my next fight to make myself a better fighter, to make my fights more exciting, to make my fights more cleanly won? And it should be an easy answer after that fight. For Pat Downey, it's not as half an easy as an answer. He fought Christian Echols, a massive underdog was Echols. The fight started off with a few punches, quick takedown at him for Downey. win for this weird choke. They said, who was it? Dave Schultz. Mark Schultz. Was it Dave Schultz in wrestling? It was Dave Schultz in wrestling, wasn't it? He used to go for it. Big John said, and he didn't get it. And when they got back up to the feet, Echols just started bombing him with uppercuts, and he landed a big uppercut. But it was the left hook that hurt Pat Downey. And once that left hook hurt him, he was like Bambi on ice. He could not fight anymore. You could kind of clearly see that the man had never taken a punch in his life. And he was backing up at a rate of knots and just waiting to be knocked out. And he didn't have to wait long because Echols hit him with a massive uppercut, knocked him out cold. So Pat Downey, like the NCAA All-American or whatever he is, has a lot of work to do if he's going to come back. He looked horrendous here. He couldn't get the takedown and looked awful on the feet. So back to the drawing board for Pat Downey. We'll see where he goes. Still has a lot of potential, still a very good athlete and all of that, but back to the drawing board. 3 more fights on the card after that. 2 good ones, 1 bad one. The good ones were, first of all, Kamaka against Boehm. Kamaka leg kicks in round 1. Kamaka was winning, but Boehm was doing a bit better in the second. Takedown for Kai late in the second round, nearly got the arm triangle. In the third, Boehm came out fast, but Kamaka settled fast enough as well. Body kicks got the fight back on the ground. And you know what? It's a bit of a pity stoppage from Kevin McDonald, but I like this stoppage because Kai Kamaka, maybe didn't reflect it in my talkings about the fight there, but Kai Kamaka was absolutely destroying him and looked great in this fight. Boehm, tough as hell, but Kamaka the classier, better fighter here, and very, very good stuff from him all around in this one. The fight after that, or the fight before it, was Lemminger against Lombardo. Both were landing well at the start. This was a fun one-round fight. Lemminger takedown from a leg kick, almost got the guillotine. Lombardo takedown from that guillotine then. And Lombardo was just landing the harder shots. And you could see he was just landing harder and harder and harder. And then it was a big left hook KO. A big left hook KO for Lombardo. And Kevin McDonald, again, good stoppage for me. John McCarthy said it on the commentary that you could just see he was about to take a shot that no one should ever be taken. Great stoppage, great win for Lombardo. And in Casbell, Jared Scoggins, bad fight. Loads of Scoggins clinch in the first round. Scoggins takedown in the second round. Bell takedown then. Almost Scoggins armbar, but Bell ended the round with a small bit of ground and pound. Clinch from Bell in the third, landed on top. And I've written in my notes here, yawn. Bell got a takedowns after Scoggins' guillotine attempt. Took the back, landed some shots, but not very much. Kaz Bell ended up winning the split decision. I'm not going to give out too much about it, to be honest. It was a woeful fight, and don't go back and watch it again if not. But all in all, main event, very, very interesting. The Carmouche finish was very good. Batchy mix, brilliant display from him. Enjoyed Kielholtz versus Joanna. Enjoyed Jaleel Willis's performance. That was very, very good. Enjoyed the great judging decisions as well. Enjoyed Kai Kamaka's win, very interesting. Michael Lombardo put on a good knockout as well in a good fight with Mark Lemminger. So all in all, a pretty good night for Bellator. Right, I will leave it there. My name is Sean Sheehan for Sherdog.com. Merry Christmas, Happy New Year. We'll see you all next time.